Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today you and I are getting into something that honestly fundamentally shifted how I look at success.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's a heavy one today, but really fascinating.
Totally. So, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of absolute, like engineering level precision.
Right. It's usually very black and white.
Exactly. Like you break your arm, you go to the hospital, and the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the black background.
And the doctor just points at it and says, there it is. That's the problem.
Right. It's binary.
Yeah.
Broken or not broken. You put a cast on it, and you have this clear timeline for when things go back to normal.
But when you step into the world of high-level neurodevelopment or, psychological trauma.
Yeah, the stuff that drives extreme success.
Exactly. The kind of extreme drive that literally shapes human history. Suddenly, that X-ray machine is just, completely useless.
It's just a blurry mess.
Right. You're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky.
Which is wild, because we spend so much time as a society idolizing these people, right?
Oh, absolutely. The geniuses, the billionaires, the world-building artists.
You see a teenager in their bedroom, and they're looking at a poster of Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or, I don't know, watching a Steven Spielberg behind-the-scenes documentary.
And the dominant narrative is always, I want to be like them.
I want that superpower.
Right. But we are completely ignoring the agonizing, unstoppable neurological engines that are actually running inside their heads.
We're missing the reality of it completely.
We fundamentally misunderstand what drives human exceptionalism. I mean, we look at their achievements and just assume they're the byproduct of a gift.
Like some enlightened state of being.
Exactly. We assume they just have a better grip on reality than the rest of us.
But the sources we're diving into today show something totally different.
Yeah. If you really dig into the psychological and sociological data of how these outliers operate, you find something much darker.
The people who rewrite our world are often, fundamentally, running from a terrifying storm inside their own minds.
It's not enlightenment, it's escape.
Okay, so let's start by dismantling an idea that, honestly, we've all been sold since we were kids.
The idea of facing reality.
Right. We're taught that being a good, mature, responsible adult means you have to face reality head on.
You're supposed to watch the news, understand global conflicts, confront your own deep personal flaws.
And process it all rationally, like it's just expected of you.
But looking at the psychological realities of the human brain, it seems like only a microscopic fraction of society actually does that.
Because it's literally exhausting, right?
It's a biological impossibility for the average human. I mean, it's not a moral failing to look away.
It's survival.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a hardwired survival mechanism. The brain is an incredibly energy-hungry organ.
How hungry are we talking?
Well, it makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes 20% of your metabolic energy.
Wow. 20% just sitting there.
Right. So if you actually tried to metabolize the sheer volume of global tragedy, structural inequality, and your own existential dread every single day,
You'd burn out.
you would literally exhaust your body's energy reserves. So the brain employs psychological defense mechanisms.
Like denial.
Denial, repression, compartmentalization, basically anything to save calories.
Okay. I like to think of this like a smartphone. It's like closing background apps on your phone to save battery.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, because if your brain is constantly running the, Middle East conflict app and the impending climate crisis app.
And the My Deepest Insecurities app.
Right. All at the same time, your battery drains to zero by breakfast.
You literally wouldn't have the cognitive RAM to go to your job or make dinner for your kids.
You just freeze up.
Exactly. And sociologists generally observe the spectrum of how human beings manage this bandwidth.
They break it down into layers.
Yeah, 3 distinct layers of how people interact with reality.
Okay, let's unpack these. If I'm looking at society, who makes up the bottom layer?
That would be the avoidance layer.
Avoidance. Makes sense. How much of the population is that?
It's roughly 10 to 20%.
Okay. And these are the folks who they don't engage at all.
Pretty much. These are individuals who simply cannot bear the weight of reality, or they've just completely checked out of it.
So what are they doing instead?
They immerse themselves entirely in daily routines, superficial entertainment, endless doom scrolling.
Substance abuse, probably.
Right, or substance abuse. They completely avert their eyes from the heavier truths of the world.
Because even a glimpse is too much.
It's just too destabilizing for them.
I mean, I feel like we all have moments where we slip into that layer. Like, after a particularly brutal week, I'm definitely just watching garbage reality TV.
Oh, for sure. We all visit that layer, but that's not where most people live permanently.
Right. Most of us are in the middle.
The middle layer, and this is the vast majority of society, about 70 to 80%.
So these people do face reality.
They do, but conditionally. They only engage when they have surplus cognitive energy.
Or when it's right on their doorstep, I'm guessing.
Exactly. When a specific issue breaches their perimeter and affects them directly.
Like a new zoning law in their neighborhood.
Right. They might engage deeply with a zoning law, or they might get really invested in a national election for, like, a few months.
But they aren't carrying the weight of the world's absurdity on their shoulders every single day.
No. They plug into reality, process what they can, and then they unplug to protect their sanity.
They close the apps when the battery indicator turns red.
That's a great way to put it.
Which leaves this tiny, tiny sliver at the top, the core layer.
A few percent of the population at most.
And these are the ones who refuse to unplug.
They never unplug. They do not avert their eyes from their own weaknesses, nor do they look away from the structural, systemic tragedies of the world.
That sounds agonizing.
It is. They suffer, they agonize, they carry the full weight of it. But they never stop thinking and acting in direct confrontation with reality.
If we think about the modern world, I can open my phone right now and within 3 seconds I'm watching a war unfold in real time.
Right.
Followed immediately by, like, highly curated, glamorous photos of a millionaire's vacation.
Which triggers massive self-loathing.
Exactly. It completely triggers you. So it makes total sense why the core layer is so small. If you didn't have defense mechanisms against that volume of input, you'd snap.
You would develop severe empathy fatigue, clinical depression, or just total burnout.
So being a little oblivious is actually healthy.
In an era of infinite information, being what we might call appropriately insensitive is a modern survival strategy.
Appropriately insensitive. I like that. You look at the tragedy, you look away, you take a breath, and you try to keep your own life balanced.
Exactly. But this brings up a massive contradiction in how we view success.
Right, because if the normal healthy thing to do is to look away, what happens to that tiny percentage in the core layer who refuse to blink?
Where do they end up?
You'd think that the people who see the world the most clearly, who understand the systems and the flaws, would be the ones running the world.
You'd assume they're the CEOs and the presidents?
Yeah. You'd think they'd be the tech billionaires. But when you look at where these truly hyper-aware people actually end up, they're almost never the ones building the rockets.
Never. Facing the world's absurdity and your own deepest flaws does not translate into ruthless corporate ambition.
So where do they go?
Well, that level of hyper-awareness usually leads to profound psychological transformations. It takes you entirely off a corporate ladder.
The sources outline 4 specific paths, right?
Yes. When someone in that core layer truly processes reality, they generally end up going down one of 4 very specific paths.
Okay, walk me through these paths. If I am cursed with seeing the world exactly as it is, what's my first option?
The first is the path of acceptance. You can think of this as the path of the sage, or the philosopher.
The sage. Okay.
When a person continuously faces the ugliness within themselves and the uncontrollable absurdities of the world, things like systemic inequality, random violence, aging, death.
The really heavy stuff.
The heaviest stuff. The initial natural reaction is intense despair, a deep, dark nihilism.
Which makes sense.
But if they possess the psychological fortitude to push through that despair, they can reach a profound state of quietness.
Wait, so they just give up?
No, it's not.
Because that sounds like resignation, not enlightenment.
It's not giving up in the sense of defeat. It's recognizing the limits of human agency.
Ah, okay.
They recognize their own microscopic smallness in the grand timeline of the universe.
They realize they can't control it.
Right. They stop trying to forcefully bend the world to their will, and instead they learn to love the reality that is right in front of them.
Like a monk or something.
Exactly. Think of the psychological state of someone like the Buddha or, a Stoic philosopher in their later years.
They choose a quiet, simple life.
Yes, but their inner emotional world is incredibly rich and stable.
Okay, I can see that. But what if they don't want to just sit quietly? What if they still feel the need to fix things?
Well, that leads us right into the second path, the path of local manifestation.
Local manifestation. So the artisan or the pioneer?
Right. This is for those who realize, on a visceral level, that they cannot carry the burden of the entire world's problems.
Because it would crush them.
If they try to fix humanity with a capital H, they will break. So they stop talking in grand, sweeping terms.
They shrink their focus.
They shrink their focus to a 5-meter radius.
They hyper-localize their empathy. I love that.
Yes, they dedicate their entire lives to improving the reality they can actually touch. Mother Teresa is a classic example of this archetype.
Right, because she wasn't writing global policy.
Exactly. She didn't try to solve global economic disparity. She dedicated her life to saving the dying people in one specific neighborhood in Calcutta.
Or like a local social worker who spends 30 years helping families in just one zip code.
Or even a master craftsman dedicating their life to perfecting a single, tangible technique.
It's not flashy on a global scale.
No, but it provides profound, tangible salvation to the people immediately around them.
But there are people who refuse to shrink their radius, right?
Mhm.
People who look at the global systems and say, no, I have to fight the whole thing.
And that is the third path, the path of martyrdom, the activist.
The activist.
These are the people who look at the distortion and injustice of the world and decide that compromising or looking away would mean the death of their soul.
They can't unsee it.
They literally risk their lives, their personal safety, their family's well-being to fight the system. They put their own happiness secondary to a greater cause.
We're talking about figures like Martin Luther King Jr., right?
Right. Yes, MLK is a perfect example. Or investigative journalists who go into war zones to report the truth, knowing they might not come back.
And society usually rewards them.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Eventually, yes. Society builds statues of these people, but their actual lived experience is usually agonizing.
Because they're fighting the current.
They face immense backlash, they are deeply isolated, and they frequently meet tragic ends: imprisonment, assassination, or complete financial ruin.
They literally sacrifice themselves on the altar of reality.
They really do.
Which leaves the fourth path. And knowing what we know about the human brain, this one feels, honestly, the most inevitable for someone who takes in too much.
The path of mental breakdown, or total withdrawal.
Yeah.
This happens when someone faces reality too purely and too defenselessly.
The hardware fries.
Exactly. The sheer volume of the world's malice, combined with their own feelings of powerlessness, simply exceeds their brain's processing capacity.
So what does that look like in real life?
They might develop severe clinical depression, schizophrenia-like symptoms, or they might completely close their hearts and drop out of society.
Living as recluses.
Right. You see this constantly in highly sensitive artists or in pair workers who suffer total nervous breakdowns after facing human suffering day in and day out.
It's an incredibly heavy framework. But there's a fascinating through line here in the research.
The shared trait.
Right. Whether they become a sage, a local artisan, an activist, or they break down entirely, people who truly face reality develop this very specific shared trait.
They develop an unbelievable gentleness and tolerance toward other people.
Gentleness.
Yes, because when you have truly faced the muddy, ugly parts of your own soul, when you've admitted your own hypocrisies and recognized your total powerlessness, you become incredibly forgiving of the weaknesses in others.
You see someone make a mistake or act out of petty jealousy, and your reaction isn't outrage.
Your reaction is, well, we are only human. I have those same demons.
And because they know exactly how cruel and unforgiving the world can be, they feel this profound gratitude for just, like, the smallest acts of goodwill.
Exactly.
Now, I really want to pause on that word, gentleness.
Okay.
Because this is the exact pivot point where the myth of the visionary genius falls apart for me.
Right.
If these highly aware people are characterized by profound gentleness and an acceptance of human frailty,
Yeah.
how on earth do we explain someone like Steve Jobs?
Or Elon Musk.
Exactly, because you read their biographies, and gentle and accepting of human frailty are the absolute last phrases anyone would use to describe them.
It's true. They are notoriously difficult.
We think of these innovators as visionaries who see reality better than anyone else. Shouldn't they be part of this core layer?
This is where we have to separate the concept of intellectual horsepower from the concept of facing reality.
Okay, separate them how?
The anomaly of the world-building genius is that they are absolutely not in the core layer.
Wait, really? Not at all.
Not at all. Their superpower is not a broad, saint-like awareness of reality. Their superpower is a terrifying, hyper-specific, selective blindness.
Selective blindness. I want to unpack that. Are you saying they're ignorant?
Not ignorant of data.
Because, I mean, these guys are reading fluid dynamics textbooks for fun in the weekend.
Right. They are incredibly smart, but they are ignorant of any reality that conflicts with their internal narrative.
Oh.
We assume that to build the future, they must be deeply thoughtful, facing every aspect of the human condition with sincerity.
But that's not it.
No. The explosive, world-altering energy of a Jobs or a Musk is born from the exact opposite.
Which is what?
It is born from extreme attachment to a singular, almost delusional vision and a ruthless, total blockage of everything else.
So while the sage accepts the world as it is, the innovator refuses to accept it.
They absolutely refuse. Let's look at how they actually operate on a psychological level. First, they have this abnormal commitment to a reality that does not yet exist.
And they'll do anything for it.
They are willing to destroy their own health, their marriages, their friendships for the sake of this vision.
Like Jobs wanting to put a dent in the universe.
Exactly.
When you look at the development of the original iPhone, his obsession with the aesthetics, the exact curvature of the glass, the specific bounce-back animation on the screen, it was absolute.
He allowed zero compromise.
None. Even when the engineers told him the laws of physics or battery chemistry literally wouldn't allow it.
Or take Elon Musk's core drive, making humanity a multiplanetary species.
Or transitioning the entire globe to sustainable energy.
Right. To a normal, rational person, these are absurd science fiction pipe dreams.
A normal person hits a manufacturing roadblock and says, well, this is impossible given current supply chains. It's out of my hands.
They accept reality. They compromise.
They close the app to save battery.
But figures like Musk or Jobs possess a specific kind of cognitive machinery that allows them to smash through that limit.
They don't close the app.
They stare at the objective reality until it bends and yields to their subjective ideal.
This sounds exactly like the phrase people always used around Steve Jobs. The reality distortion field.
Yeah.
I always thought that was just a cute metaphor for him being like a really good salesman.
It wasn't a metaphor. It was a very real psychological phenomenon.
Wild.
The reality distortion field was a fundamental mechanism of his brain. Jobs would routinely ignore objective physical limitations.
So if a team of veteran engineers told him a production schedule was impossible,
He wouldn't argue the logistics. He would simply stare at them and insist it could be done.
just flat out deny their reality.
He would replace the objective reality of the room with his own subjective reality, and he would push with such ferocious, unwavering intensity that eventually the people around him started to doubt their own expertise.
He started to believe his reality.
He literally warped the perception of reality for the people in his proximity.
And you see the exact same pattern with Musk's SpaceX launch schedules. He promises timelines that everyone in the aerospace industry says are mathematically impossible.
Because they are ignoring the objective reality of now and only facing their subjective reality of the future.
But there has to be a hidden cost to this,
A
right?
massive one. To maintain 120% focus on their specific vision, they have to mercilessly cut away all other realities.
They have to employ an overwhelming cognitive cutoff.
Precisely.
So what are they cutting off specifically?
Empathy. Human relationships. The emotional states of the people around them.
The soft stuff.
Yeah. If you read the biographies of Jobs, Musk, or even someone like Jeff Bezos, there is no shortage of stories about them being incredibly cold, demanding, or even outright cruel to their employees. They frequently have deeply fractured family lives.
Because if you truly face the reality of another person's feelings, if you have that profound gentleness of the core layer we talked about,
Yeah.
you can't operate at that ruthless speed.
You physically cannot do it. If you stop to care about the exhaustion of your engineering team, or if you pause to consider the work-life balance of your
The
executive,
rocket doesn't get built.
you cannot make the split-second, world-altering decisions required to build a trillion-dollar company from scratch.
Wow.
Furthermore, they aggressively deny their own weaknesses.
Which is the opposite of the sage.
Right. A sage looks inward, sees their flaws, and quietly accepts them. These visionaries seem to project their internal voids outward.
What do you mean by that?
They feel an intense emptiness or a complex inside themselves, and instead of processing it in therapy, they try to fill it by aggressively rewriting the outside world.
So they aren't facing reality at all.
No.
They're forcing reality to bend to their internal vision by incinerating everything else.
It's a completely unbalanced way of interacting with the world.
Unbalanced is putting it lightly. It sounds almost monstrous.
It is a monstrous trait. I don't mean monstrous as in evil. I mean monstrous as in defying human proportion.
They aren't balanced saints.
They are biological engines of extreme focus that bring away every reality that doesn't serve their specific vision.
Okay, let's follow this thread, because it leads to a really uncomfortable question about how our society is actually structured.
Okay.
If these reality-distorting billionaires hold so much power, if they can literally reshape industries, build space programs, warp timelines, are they the absolute top of the societal food chain?
That is the assumption, yes.
Because if you ask a random person on the street, or if you just look at the Forbes list, the assumption is that net worth equals supremacy. You have the most money, you win.
But if you look at how the true elite actually operate, there is a hidden hierarchy.
The general public uses a very simple, very visible metric to measure power, which is money.
Right. But if you step into the world of the true intellectual and cultural elite, the old guard of society, they use an entirely different currency.
What currency?
Well, in those circles, a brilliant tenured professor, a groundbreaking scholar, or a visionary artist is revered.
Over a billionaire.
Yes. Meanwhile, a billionaire who only has money might actually be viewed with quiet disdain.
See, I think a lot of people listening to this would struggle to believe that.
Why is that?
Because we live in a world where tech billionaires buy social media platforms just to control the conversation. How can a professor with like a 15-year-old Honda Civic possibly outrank a billionaire in any real hierarchy?
It sounds counterintuitive, but to understand this, we have to look at the framework developed by the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu.
Bourdieu. Yeah.
Bourdieu argued that power in society isn't just about money. He categorized human power into 3 distinct types of capital.
Okay, let's break down Bourdieu's 3 capitals. What's the baseline?
The baseline is economic capital. This is exactly what it sounds like. Cash, stock options, real estate, physical assets.
This is what billionaires have an abundance of, the Forbes list capital.
Yes, but the second type is cultural capital.
Cultural capital.
And this is entirely immaterial. It encompasses your education, your refined tastes, your artistic sensibilities, your deep understanding of history.
Even your linguistic nuance,
Yes.
right?
Exactly. It's your ability to walk into an art gallery and not just buy a painting, but critically deconstruct its historical context.
You actually understand what you're looking at.
Yes. This is the capital that scholars, philosophers, and artists possess.
And what's the third?
Social capital.
Yeah.
And we need to be careful here because in the modern era, people confuse this with having millions of Instagram followers.
Oh, right. Like influencer status.
That is not real social capital. Real social capital isn't about fame. It's about the quality and exclusivity of your networks.
Like who you actually know behind closed doors.
It's about deep bonds of trust, lineage, and the caliber of the closed communities you belong to.
So how does this play out when these different types of capital collide? Let's take a hypothetical.
Okay.
Say a 25-year-old creates a crypto token, gets super lucky, and becomes a billionaire overnight.
It happens.
They have massive economic capital.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they walk into a charity gala hosted by the old guard elite. What happens?
They will be let in the door because of their money, but they will be socially isolated.
Really? They won't just be welcomed with open arms.
No. If that crypto billionaire uses vulgar language, has no understanding of classical history, and only talks about sports cars and token prices,
the old guard will judge them.
the established elite look at them and see a nouveau riche. They see a person severely lacking in cultural capital.
So what do?
They will smile at them, take their donation, and then completely exclude them from the actual inner circles of power.
Wow. It's the classic divide between new money and old money.
Exactly.
And there's a really specific sociological example of this in the sources regarding social capital in Japan that highlights how impossible it is to buy your way in.
The Isetan department store founders.
Yes, let's talk about that.
That is a perfect illustration of how old world social capital works. In modern Japanese history, the families that founded heritage department stores like Isetan or Mitsukoshi were never just retail CEOs.
And we're just merchants.
No. They were the center of high society salons. Their families were deeply intertwined through marriage and business with the political elite, the old nobility, and major cultural figures.
Their lineages are woven into the very fabric of the nation's history.
Right. So if a new tech billionaire in Tokyo tries to force their way into that specific circle,
They just can't do it.
they can't. That community is fundamentally suspicious of new, flashy money. It doesn't matter if you have $1 billion in your checking account.
They want to know the story behind the money.
Do you want to know how is that money made? Does your business provide true social value, or is it just arbitrage?
Do you have a deep education in our cultural history?
And most importantly, who is vouching for you? Are you introduced by someone we have trusted for 3 generations?
If you can't pass those filters,
Your money is meaningless to them?
because social capital proves that you have passed the ultimate vetting process. It proves you have time and trust on your side, which are the 2 things a newly minted billionaire just cannot buy.
Exactly. And this is why you often see the nouveau riche, those without cultural and social capital, who just want their ego stroked, ending up in very flashy, sometimes shady underground networks.
Because the old guard won't have them.
Right. Because those shady networks are the only places where their money immediately buys them the praise they crave.
The quality of your connections reveals your true class far more than the size of your bank account.
It really does.
This dynamic sets up a major distinction between what sociologists call players and creators.
This is the crux of the entire hierarchy. Billionaires, no matter how insanely wealthy they become, are ultimately just the top players in a game that was built by someone else.
And that game is capitalism.
Yes. They figured out the rules, they optimized the strategies, and they scored the most points.
But the scholars, the thought leaders, the artists,
They are the creators. They don't play the game, they invent entirely new games.
they write the new rules.
They shift paradigms, and they create the systems of value that the players eventually compete in.
I want to push back on this a little bit, specifically using Elon Musk as an example.
Okay, let's look at Musk.
Because if you look at his public persona, say, on Twitter, he seems to constantly mock academics, regulators, and journalists.
He does?
He projects this image that he, the ultimate player, is vastly superior to the creators. Does an insanely wealthy tech mogul actually look up to a relatively underpaid academic?
The perception that he mocks true intellect is a misunderstanding of his behavior.
Really? How so?
The reality is that someone like Musk has immense reverence and perhaps even a deep-seated inferiority complex when it comes to top-tier scientists and academics. He does not look down on them.
Why would he have a complex? He's the richest man in the world.
Because you have to remember his baseline identity. Musk is, at his core, a frustrated academic.
Wait, really?
Yes, he got degrees in physics and economics from UPenn, and he was accepted into a PhD program in material science at Stanford.
Which he dropped out of after 2 days,
Right.
to start his first internet company during the dot-com boom.
Right. He chose the entrepreneurial path because it was faster, but his core identity remains that of a hardcore physics nerd.
I mean, he does insist on being called chief engineer at SpaceX, not CEO.
Exactly. If you want to flatter him, you don't tell him he's great at making money. You tell him his understanding of orbital mechanics and metallurgy is astounding.
So when he looks at a true scientific pioneer, he sees the one thing his money couldn't buy him.
Yeah.
Pure, untainted intellectual legacy.
Take Shinya Yamanaka, the Nobel Prize-winning scientist who discovered iPS cells.
The stem cell research that fundamentally rewrote the future of human medicine.
Right. To Musk, a scientist like Yamanaka is a god. Musk's own companies, like Neuralink, rely entirely on the foundational, unglamorous research built by academic neuroscientists over decades.
He needs their work.
To disrespect the scientists on the frontier of human knowledge would be to deny the very foundation of his own mission.
Okay, but what about someone like Thomas Piketty? He's the French economist who wrote Capital in the 21st Century, and his entire thesis is a brutal critique of wealth inequality.
Surely Musk hates guys like that.
Musk might argue aggressively with Piketty's ideas. He might hate the idea of a wealth tax, but the fact that he argues with him at all, that he engages with the logic, shows that he recognizes Piketty as a massive, undeniable intellect.
It's a clash of titans in his mind.
Exactly. Musk ignores mediocre criticism entirely. If he is engaging with a scholar, even combatively, it's proof that he respects their cultural capital.
So who does he actually spit on? Who gets the mockery?
He mocks the people he views as having no real substance, no cultural capital, and no engineering skill.
Like who?
He mocks middle management MBAs who try to run companies by adjusting spreadsheets without understanding the product.
Oh, okay.
He mocks bureaucrats who blindly follow precedent and stifle innovation.
So for the true elite, money really is just fuel.
That's all it is.
Wow.
Money is the gasoline Musk uses to actualize his engineering visions. But true intellect, true art, expands the very boundaries of human existence. Pushing the boundary of knowledge, even 1 millimeter, is a feat that all the money in the world cannot achieve on its own.
The creators will always sit above the players.
If we really want to prove this point, the creators rule players, we have to look at the absolute apex of power. Let's start with the political apex.
The President of the United States.
Exactly. The person sitting in the Oval Office holds peak physical, military, and economic power. They can literally end the world with a phone call.
It's ultimate power.
So who do they idolize?
When a U.S. president looks for inspiration, they do not look at contemporary billionaires. They don't idolize the CEO of Apple or Exxon.
Who do they look at?
They look to the gods of history. They look at Abraham Lincoln, Franklin D. Roosevelt, George Washington.
Why them? Why not someone who built unprecedented wealth?
Because a president is acutely, painfully aware of the passage of time. They have a maximum of 8 years in power.
That is a hard, inescapable wall.
Their ultimate anxiety isn't about their current approval ratings or the economy today. It's about how their paragraph will read in a history book 200 years from now.
They want to be etched into the eternal narrative.
Yes. So when they move into the Oval Office, the first thing they do is pick which historical busts they want displayed.
Lincoln saved the nation from tearing itself apart. FDR navigated the Great Depression and defeated fascism. Washington created the republic from scratch.
To a sitting president, these historical figures have achieved a kind of immortality that no amount of money or legislation can buy.
A billionaire dominates the market of now, but a truly great president wants to dominate the world of a century from now.
They envy immortality.
That's the political apex.
Yeah.
Let's look at the cultural apex. Why is a film director like Steven Spielberg so deeply revered by billionaires?
Oh, this is fascinating.
Because I can hear a skeptic saying, look, Spielberg makes great popcorn movies, but a billionaire builds a smartphone that fundamentally changes how I communicate. How can you compare a guy who made a movie about a shark to the guy who put the internet in my pocket?
That skepticism is a very natural bias we have in our modern technology-obsessed society. We dramatically overvalue physical infrastructure.
Right.
The person who invents the smartphone puts a physical tool in your hand, but a genius artist like Spielberg operates on a completely different and arguably much higher plane.
He builds the imagination infrastructure of humanity.
Exactly. Imagination infrastructure.
I love that phrase, but let's break down how that actually functions.
Think about it as a mass installation of software into the human brain. The smartphone is just the hardware.
The microchips are just the delivery mechanism.
Yes. Spielberg installs concepts, fears, and hopes that the entire globe suddenly shares.
Let's use Jaws as the prime example.
Before 1975, the ocean was just a body of water. It was a place you went swimming.
Nothing scary about it.
With one film, Spielberg installed a universal, visceral fear of the unseen into the collective psyche of the entire planet.
He literally reprogrammed how humanity interacts with the ocean.
You still hear those 2 cello notes in your head when you swim out too far. That is a permanent software installation in the human brain.
And he didn't just do it with fear. Look at Jurassic Park.
Before Jurassic Park, dinosaurs were dusty bones in a museum. They were an academic curiosity.
But he resurrected them in the collective imagination as living, breathing, terrifying creatures.
The way a child today imagines a T-Rex moving or sounding isn't based on paleontology.
No, it's based entirely on Spielberg's imagination.
He also completely flipped our concept of the unknown with E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Right, because historically, if you look at 1950s sci-fi, aliens were always terrifying invaders coming to destroy us.
It was a projection of Cold War paranoia.
But Spielberg flipped that paradigm 180 degrees.
He made the alien a friend. He made the unknown something to be curious about rather than terrified of. He changed our cultural DNA.
But it goes way beyond just popcorn entertainment. Artists build the moral infrastructure too.
Look at Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan. A smartphone cannot teach you ethics.
A microchip cannot teach a society the cost of war.
But these films anchored our global moral compass. They took the abstract statistics of the Holocaust and the beach landings of World War II, and they burned them into the emotional memory of billions of people.
If those films didn't exist, our collective, visceral understanding that fascism must never be repeated might be significantly shallower.
A single powerful movie can shift the global standard of good and evil more effectively than 100 political speeches.
Which leads to this incredible realization about the relationship between artists and engineers. The visions created by the artists are the literal blueprints for the billionaires.
Yes. When Steve Jobs was dreaming up the iPad, or when Elon Musk looks at the stars and decides he wants to build a colony on Mars, what is fueling their imagination?
It's not a spreadsheet.
No, it's the sci-fi worlds they absorbed as children. Scientists don't invent the future out of thin air.
Artists dream up the vision first.
They write a story and say, wouldn't this future be amazing? Or wouldn't this future be terrifying?
And then the kids who watch those movies grow up, become engineers, and spend their lives building the hardware to make the artist's dream real.
The artists write the software. The tech billionaires just manufacture the hardware to run it.
And that is why the billionaires want to sit next to Spielberg on his yacht.
Exactly. They want their physical wealth to rub shoulders with his godlike cultural capital.
They know that they are just building the tools, but he is the one actually steering the dreams of humanity.
It's an incredible dynamic.
Okay, so if an artist like Spielberg or an innovator like Jobs possesses this godlike ability to literally rewrite the brains of billions of people.
The obvious question is how?
Right. What is different about their brains? Because it can't just be a good work ethic and a lucky break. How do they actually do it?
This is where we uncover the engine driving these individuals, and it is not a fairy tale about being touched by a magic wand.
It's much messier than that.
These geniuses frequently share a specific and often profoundly painful neurological profile.
Neurological and developmental, right?
Yes. They usually possess developmental or neurological traits like Spielberg's dyslexia or the ASD and ADHD traits observed in Jobs and Musk.
And this is almost always combined with early trauma or a profound sense of alienation during their formative years. Let's look closely at Spielberg's dyslexia. When he was a kid in the 1950s and 60s, there was no widespread understanding of learning disabilities.
No one was giving him extra time on tests.
No. He was just seen as lazy or stupid by the adults.
He couldn't read well, the teachers gave up on him, and because he was different, he was relentlessly bullied by his peers.
He had absolutely no place to belong in the normal structure of society.
But the human brain is incredibly plastic, and his brain compensated in an extraordinary way.
Explain how that compensation works biologically.
When a brain with dyslexia struggles to process text, often due to differences in how regions like Wernicke's area function, it doesn't just stop working.
It reroutes that energy.
Individuals with dyslexia often develop terrifyingly powerful visual and spatial imagination.
Spielberg couldn't process written words easily, but he could look at a script and instantaneously, in his head, visualize the lighting, the camera angles, and the exact emotional weight of a scene as a perfect three-dimensional projection.
So his cinematic genius wasn't just a talent, it was a survival mechanism.
It was the only way his brain could process and communicate with a world that rejected him.
And he took the trauma of that bullying, that deep isolation, and he transmuted it directly into his art.
The fear and acute anxiety he felt as a bullied, helpless kid, that became the unseen, relentless, unstoppable terror of the shark in Jaws.
Exactly. The profound loneliness he felt during his parents' divorce. That became the desperate longing for a friend from the stars in E.T.
You know exactly where the universal switches for human fear and loneliness were located, because his own nervous system was hypersensitive to them.
It's the transmutation of pain into power.
Jobs and Musk did the exact same thing, right?
They absolutely did. They converted their sense of alienation, this deep-seated feeling of, I don't fit into this world, the rules of this world reject me, into a manic, almost vengeful energy.
I'll show the world that rejected me.
If I don't fit into the world's default operating system, I will forcefully rewrite the operating system so it fits me. That is the core drive.
Think about it this way. They were handed a puzzle they couldn't solve. The pieces just didn't fit their specific brain chemistry.
So instead of trying to force the pieces together like a normal person would to just get by,
They flipped the table, threw out the pieces, and built an entirely new table.
they rewrite the world because the default world was incompatible with their neurology. But the tragedy here, and we have to understand this to stop idolizing them blindly, is that the internal process powering this is agonizing.
Which brings us to the concept of hyperfocus. In Silicon Valley and on productivity blogs, hyperfocus sounds like an amazing biohack.
Take this supplement, unlock your hyperfocus, and get 10 times more done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But looking at the neurology, that is a massive misunderstanding of what is actually happening.
Hyperfocus, in the context of these specific neurological profiles, is not a state of joy, flow, or healthy productivity.
It's a broken brake pedal in the brain.
It is a massive, unregulated flood of dopamine and noradrenaline that forces the brain into an absolute frenzy.
And the terror of it is that the person cannot stop it, even if they are physically exhausted.
Even if they are begging for rest.
It's a hostage situation in your own head. You are trapped in the driver's seat of a car with the accelerator pinned to the floor and no brakes.
And this relates directly to a brain network called the DMN.
Let's explain this, because this is the key to why they can't stop working.
The DMN stands for the default mode network. Think of it as a series of interacting brain regions that become active when you aren't actively focusing on a task.
So when a neurotypical person sits quietly on the couch or goes for a walk without their phone, the DMN kicks in.
It acts like a gentle background organizer. It tidies up memories, processes the events of the day, and allows for daydreaming.
It's calming, like a quiet river.
But have you ever sat down to meditate or just tried to lay in bed without a podcast playing and suddenly your anxiety spikes through the roof?
That's what we're talking about with a dysfunctional DMN.
For the neurodivergent, hyperactive brain we've been discussing, the volume dial in the DMN is broken. It is cranked up to a deafening roar.
So when they try to rest, sit still, or meditate, they are not met with a calming river.
They are hit by a tsunami. All their unprocessed anxieties, their past traumas, their deep-seated fears, and a chaotic, overwhelming swirl of abstract thoughts come crashing down on their prefrontal cortex simultaneously.
So resting is literally terrifying. Sitting on a meditation cushion isn't a path to peace, it's putting yourself in a psychological torture chamber.
To protect themselves from this internal tsunami, they have to keep moving. They have to keep hyper-focusing on an external problem to keep the DMN suppressed.
Look at Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA.
Yeah.
He runs a company worth trillions of dollars. He is essentially one capitalism.
And yet, he has stated publicly that he operates under the constant paranoid feeling that his company is exactly 30 days away from total bankruptcy.
He works grueling 14-hour days, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Why? It's not out of a healthy, joyful passion for microchips.
It's out of a desperate biological need to drown out the horrific alarm bells ringing in his own head.
If he stops working, the anxiety consumes him. The work is the only thing keeping the monster at bay.
It's pure survival.
So if this brain structure is so agonizing, so chaotic, and so driven by fear, why does it yield such world-changing ideas?
That's the paradox.
Why can't a normal, brilliant, well-adjusted Ivy League genius just study really hard, meditate daily, and achieve the exact same level of innovation?
It comes down to a fundamental physical difference in the hardware of the brain. Specifically, we have to look at a biological process called synaptic pruning and a psychological filter called latent inhibition.
Let's take those one by one. What is synaptic pruning doing in a normal brain?
When a normal brain matures from childhood through adolescence, it creates millions of neural connections. But eventually, the brain realizes it can't sustain all of them efficiently.
So it undergoes a pruning process.
It literally cuts away neural connections that it deems unnecessary for daily survival and efficiency. It trims the jungle into a neat set of highways.
Coupled with this is latent inhibition, which is your brain's ability to filter out irrelevant stimuli.
Meaning, if I see a coffee cup on my desk, my brain just says, that's a coffee cup, and I move on.
It filters out the reflection of the light on the ceramic, the microscopic texture of the handle, the memories associated with the smell of coffee.
It keeps you sane and efficient. You can focus on your email.
But the genius brain, the neurodivergent brain we're analyzing, fails to prune those connections.
They often lack proper synaptic pruning, and their latent inhibition filters are broken or incredibly leaky. Everything comes in raw.
So when they look at the coffee cup, they are processing the light, the molecular structure, the memories, the geometry all at once.
Their neural pathways remain an overgrown, unpruned jungle.
And this leads to a phenomenon called remote association. Because they have all these extra unpruned pathways, they connect ideas that a normal brain would literally never link.
Let's use the example of the Japanese comedian and filmmaker Hitoshi Matsumoto to illustrate this.
If you say the word apple to a neurotypical person, their brain takes a very short, highly pruned logical hop. Red, fruit, sweet.
But for someone with this unpruned, low-inhibition brain architecture,
It's an explosion.
They hear Apple and their brain instantly, simultaneously connects it to gravity and Isaac Newton, to the biblical story of Adam and Eve, to the wrinkles on a grandmother's face, to the concept of poison in Snow White.
Dozens of highly remote, disparate concepts merge instantly.
Think about normal thought as a train. It makes logical, sequential stops. Station A leads to station B, which leads to station C. You have to ride the track to get to the conclusion.
But the genius brain is a helicopter.
Exactly. It takes off and sees the entire completed 3D maze from above in a single glance.
Nikola Tesla is the ultimate historical example of the helicopter brain. Tesla didn't need to draw blueprints step by step, drafting A to B to C like a normal engineer.
He possessed such a dense, unpruned neural network that he could build, test, and run complex electric motors entirely in his head in 3 dimensions.
He could let them run for a week in his imagination and then check them for wear and tear before ever touching a physical tool.
So the hard truth is all the productivity seminars, all the biohacking routines, and all the early morning ice baths in the world will not help you think like this.
You can tune up a normal car all you want, you can give it premium gas, but you cannot turn a Honda Civic into a rocket ship.
Especially a rocket ship that is constantly on the verge of vibrating itself to pieces.
You cannot learn it. It is a structural reality of their neurology. It's a biological anomaly that you either have or you don't.
But people look at these guys working 100-hour weeks, sleeping on the factory floor, and they just shrug and call them workaholics.
It's like, oh, Elon Musk is just an extreme workaholic.
But if you actually dig into the neurochemistry, there is a massive diagnostic distinction between a standard workaholic and the driven genius we are talking about.
It is a critical distinction. They might look identical from the outside. Both are sitting at their desks at 2 a.m., but the internal neurochemical engine driving them is entirely different.
Let's compare them. What is driving a standard corporate workaholic?
A standard workaholic is driven primarily by the dopamine reward system and a desperate need for social approval.
They want the promotion, they want the status, they want their boss to praise them, they want the bigger house.
They are addicted to the external validation provided by the system they are playing in.
So if a workaholic gets fired or retires, what happens?
Their identity completely collapses. They often fall into severe depression because the external mirror that told them they were valuable is gone.
They literally do not know who they are without the job title.
But the driven genius, the Jobs, the Musk, the Spielberg,
They are not fueled by dopamine, they are fueled by noradrenaline.
this is the fight-or-flight chemical.
It's the chemical of pure fear, anxiety, and survival. They fundamentally do not care about the boss's approval or the corporate ladder.
If you take away their company, they won't sit around depressed about losing their identity.
They will immediately go into a garage and obsessively start building something else because the work isn't for external validation.
The work is the only mechanism they have to silence the internal panic.
Think about a classic scenario. It's midnight. You're in bed, you're exhausted, you're drifting off to sleep.
Suddenly you remember an email you forgot to send or a package you needed to ship for your business.
A normal person, even a workaholic, has the cognitive ability to say, I am tired, it is midnight, I'll do it tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
But the driven, hyper-anxious brain cannot do that.
The moment that uncompleted task enters their consciousness, their amygdala, the fear center of the brain, hijacks the system.
It starts screaming as if a literal tiger has entered the bedroom.
The forgotten email is perceived by the nervous system as a mortal threat to their survival. Their heart rate spikes, they start sweating.
And so they get out of bed, get dressed, drive to the office, and send the email at 1 a.m.
And here is the fascinating psychological trick. Their prefrontal cortex rationalizes the panic. The brain says to itself, I'm doing this because I'm a dedicated leader. I provide excellent customer service.
But the biological reality is that the brain is doing it simply to make the physical discomfort and dread stop.
They aren't serving the customer. They are escaping the torture of their own amygdala.
Wow. They are essentially hostages to their own nervous systems. Which brings us to the end game.
How does it all end?
Yeah, how does a life lived at 200 miles per hour, fueled by pure noradrenaline and unpruned neural jungles, actually end? You would think these brains would just burn out by age 60 and succumb to dementia or complete cognitive collapse.
The paradox is that the exact opposite is often true.
Really?
Because their brain's been running so hot, firing on all cylinders and building incredibly dense, complex neural networks their entire lives, they develop what neurologists call massive cognitive reserve.
Explain cognitive reserve.
Think of the brain as a highway system. A normal brain has a few major highways. If a bridge collapses due to aging or early-stage Alzheimer's, traffic stops. You lose function.
But these hyperactive brains have built a vast, intricate, multi-level highway system.
As they age, some neurons naturally die off. But because they have so much density, so many alternative routes, their brain instantaneously reroutes around the damage.
They are highly resistant to developing the symptoms of dementia. They retain their sharp memory and processing speed well into old age.
But it's not a happy ending, is it? There's a catch.
A tragic catch. While they keep their sharp intellect, a specific part of the brain, the frontal lobe, naturally weakens and atrophies with age in everyone.
The frontal lobe is the rational brake pedal of the brain. It is the part that regulates emotion, controls impulse, and allows for social grace.
Oh man. So the brakes rust out, but the engine is still revving at 200 miles per hour.
Yes. This is why you so often see these brilliant, world-changing minds become incredibly difficult, uncompromising, and sometimes tyrannical elders.
Their hyperfixations, their paranoia, and their anger worsen because the biological mechanism that kept those impulses somewhat in check is eroding.
They remain razor-sharp, but they become almost impossible to manage or live with.
So they never get to rest. Even in old age, the storm doesn't pass. They are biologically incapable of resting.
Not until the very, very end.
The final moments.
As death truly approaches, as the body begins to permanently shut down, the terror and the panic in these highly controlling individuals often peak.
They're losing control of the one thing they cannot out-engineer, their own mortality.
It is their greatest fear realized. But in the final moments, minutes, or sometimes hours before death, something miraculous happens biologically.
The brain executes a final failsafe.
The failing brain, deprived of oxygen and realizing the end is irreversible, releases a massive flood of endorphins and a naturally occurring compound called DMT.
DMT is one of the most powerful hallucinogens known to science. It is the ultimate anesthetic and visionary chemical.
It shuts down the amygdala. It shuts down the fear center completely.
It physically burns out the noradrenaline alarm system that has tortured them every second of their waking lives. The broken brake pedal doesn't matter anymore because the engine is finally turned off. The storm breaks.
And this gives profound context to the story of Steve Jobs' final moments.
Yes. Steve Jobs, a man who fought reality his whole life, who raged and demanded and hyper-focused until he literally changed how human beings communicate.
Yeah.
In his final moments, surrounded by his family, he didn't look at them.
He looked past them into the space beyond, and his final words were simply, "Oh, wow. Oh, wow."
Oh, wow. He wasn't looking at a product design. He wasn't looking at a spreadsheet or a market share graph.
He was experiencing the DMT flood. For the first time in his entire life, the terrifying roar of his default mode network was silenced.
He was experiencing a moment of true, quiet peace and profound, awe-inspiring beauty that his brain had never allowed him to feel while he was healthy.
After a lifetime of the engine screaming, the sudden silence was so incredibly beautiful that all he could say was, "Oh, wow."
It's incredibly moving, and it really brings us full circle. We started this conversation talking about the X-ray, this human desire for a clean, binary understanding of why people do what they do.
And we've journeyed through the absolute luxury of the middle layer, just being able to look away from their phones, to the hidden social capital of the true elite, and finally down into the painful, unstoppable, unpruned engines of the people who build our future.
We idolize the output. We love the rockets. We love the movies. We love the sleek smartphones. But we remain willfully, perhaps blissfully, ignorant of the agonizing psychological input required to produce them.
It's a heavy price to pay.
Which leaves me with a thought that I want to put directly to you, the listener. We spend so much time envying the billionaires, the icons, and the geniuses. We tell ourselves we want to be them. We think, if I just had their drive, I could change the world.
But if their world-changing creations are actually just the byproduct of them frantically running away from the terrifying storms inside their own heads,
maybe the ultimate privilege isn't having the power to change the world. Maybe the ultimate privilege is simply having a mind that allows you to sit quietly in a room and do absolutely nothing.